They called it a junkyard, said I was ruining the view, that my cattle farm built from 100 battered shipping containers didn't belong anywhere near their pristine suburban paradise. Funny thing is, when winter came, when the power lines froze and the pipes burst, my cattle slept warm, my family stayed fed, and the only thing that froze solid out here was their sense of superiority. It started with steel. Not pretty timber, not storybook bricks, just steel, weathered and scarred. 100 shipping containers I salvaged from the forgotten corners of the world and dragged onto 4 acres of Montana soil. Each one had been beaten by ocean storms, faded by years under sun and salt, but in my hands they got a new life, a new purpose. I didn't set out to pick a fight with a homeowners association. Hell, I just wanted a fortress strong enough to shield my Black Angus herd and the family I love from the nastiest winter this valley had seen in decades. People called me stubborn. Some whispered crazy. Maybe they were right. But when you have 2 boys who look to you for safety, a wife who's walked through fire at your side, and a herd that puts food on your table and meaning in your days, you do what it takes. We came home 2 years back. I'd walked away from a steady contractor job in Denver, good money, long hours, and a soul that felt like it was being sanded down a little each day. Drawing blueprints never filled my lungs like the high, thin air of these ridgelines. Harper, my wife, grew up here running barefoot through these pastures before her parents passed. When city life finally broke me down, she looked across the kitchen table one night and just said, "Let's go home." So we did. Me, Harper, 16-year-old Luke, and 12-year-old Jonah loaded everything that mattered into a stock trailer and drove north until the mountains rose up like old friends. The old farmhouse was tired but proud. The barn had collapsed in on itself. The ground was iron hard even in April, but the moment we rolled across the cattle guard, something in all of us exhaled. This was ours again. Year 1, nothing but reconstruction. Drafting plans, welding supports, patching every leaky roof. Year 2, I started sketching out the container idea on a scrap of envelope over coffee. I'd worked with FEMA back in the day, designing shelters that could laugh off Category 4 hurricanes. I knew what those steel boxes could take. And with Montana winters getting uglier, I needed something modular, weatherproof, and affordable, something that could stare down 60 mph winds and nights cold enough to freeze spit in the air. So I hunted them down one by one: salvage yards, auction lots, rail yards in 3 states, dented giants in faded blues and rusty reds. By the 12th unit, Luke could lay a weld bead as straight as mine. By the 30th, Jonah was stripping insulation panels faster than I could fire up the grinder. Harper stained lumber-sealed foam gaps and taught the boys how to keep curious calves away from live torches. It became our rhythm. Every window cut, every vent duct installed, we did it together. The smell of hot metal and fresh sawdust hung in the air all summer. What we built was more than shelter. We laid underground piping to circulate warmth, installed graywater recycling, built wind-resistant anchors so the storm winds just howled and moved on. Each module was numbered, labeled, fine-tuned. We even set up a platform for school groups to visit, watch the herd. Harper called it the Ark. The name stuck something strong enough to carry life through a flood. By October, with snow already dusting the high country, we were welding the final seams. The valley smelled of frost and pine. The cattle had started settling in, their breath rising in soft clouds inside the modules. I was sealing a roof vent when Harper's voice floated up, calm but edged in steel. "Colt, you need to come down." I looked up the gravel drive, a black SUV creeping up like it owned the place. 2 men in suits, one with a clipboard, the other with a smile that never touched his eyes. "Mr. Ramsey, we represent the Oak Meadows Homeowners Association." "We're not in Oak Meadows," I told them, climbing down. "Your property is adjacent to our perimeter and visible from multiple resident vantage points," said the clipboard guy, like he'd practiced in the mirror. "We've received complaints." "About what?" He pointed to our grid of steel modules gleaming in the light, that industrial installation. "It's livestock housing." "It's an eyesore," said the other, smile gone. They told me politely but firmly that our structures violated their visual uniformity standards and had to be dismantled in 30 days. I reminded them calmly as I could that our land's been zoned agricultural since the 1890s. No covenant signed, nothing binding us to their suburban tastes. They left with a warning and the smell of expensive cologne hanging in the air. That night, Harper made venison stew while I went over blueprints at the table with the boys. She didn't ask what I'd do. She already knew. I'll finish it, I said, tracing a weld line. No matter what letters they send. Luke looked up, eyes fierce. They don't get it, Dad. This isn't just a barn. It's everything we've got. Then we'll make sure they never forget it. By the end of that week, all 100 modules stood bolted and sealed. The herd settled, the heating grid humming. Solar marker lights along the perimeter part, safety part, defiance. From their walking trails, our fortress caught the sun and shimmered like a promise. We were ready, or so I thought. The real fight began quiet. A single sheet of expensive paper in our mailbox folded tight, bearing the gold crest of the Oak Meadows Covenant Council. No certified mail, just entitlement pressed into stationery. Harper carried it in lips tight. Notice of structural non-compliance. Threats dressed up as procedure. No name, no law cited. Just remove or else. I read it twice, felt my old job site temper rise. I never signed any covenant, I said. And this land was ag-zoned 100 years before they built their first sidewalk, Harper replied. We both knew who was behind it. Karen Delaney, vice president of the HOA, lived 3 houses down the ridge, just close enough to see our pastures. Last spring, she'd drop by all pearls and practice sympathy, asking if we planned anything that might affect community aesthetics. I told her straight, we're raising cattle. She smiled like I'd said toxic waste. 2 days after the letter, a flyer showed up on their clubhouse board. An ugly photo of our module's colors, drained rust. Exaggerated, captioned. This is not Oak Meadows. Stop the industrial takeover. Smaller text urged folks to protect our standards. Jonah stared at it over chili that night. They make it look like we built a prison. Luke just snorted. The next morning, a sedan circled our fence twice. A guy in a windbreaker, tablet in hand, measuring lines. Surveyor, he said. Hired by Oak Meadows to document visibility impact. I let him finish. I'd already walked every fence post myself. Our land was separate, untouchable by their rules. But facts, I was learning, weren't their currency. That weekend, we invited real neighbors, ranchers from south of us. Hay rides, let the kids feed calves, showed off our systems. An older rancher from the county AG board walked. The grid nodded slow. This could rewrite how small outfits survive up here, he murmured. I felt a flicker of pride until I spotted movement on the ridge. Sun glinting off binoculars from Karen's porch. Monday, the sheriff rolled up. Dan Mulligan, good man. Afraid so. He sighed, holding up a paper. Claim is your structures are a fire hazard and an eyesore. I almost laughed. Foam fire retardant. Suppression lines, last month. He grinned. I figured, but I gotta log the visit. He took a few pictures, more curious than concerned, then paused at his truck. They're loud, Colt, and they've got friends in high places. Stay ahead of the noise. I'm not breaking any laws. I know, but sometimes it's not about laws. His words stuck long after his taillights faded. Midweek, our mailbox overflowed with anonymous envelopes, photoshopped images, fake headlines about property values and neighborhood decline. Luke wanted to fight back online. I said no, they want a reaction. We give them facts. Quietly, I started building a binder, drawing specs, photos of warm calves on sub-zero nights, all stamped with my engineer seal. Then I requested a formal county review. If Karen and her board wanted a fight, I'd give them one. But on the ground, I stuck to facts. Because this wasn't just our ranch anymore. It was about whether a family could build something better on their own land without begging approval from people who only cared about the view. Karen didn't waste time. The next move, a drone buzzing over the grid at sunset, camera glinting. Luke wanted to take it down with his slingshot, but I said, let it fly. We've got nothing to hide. That night, Karen posted her masterpiece on their private forum, slow-motion zooms on every rust patch, ominous music captions accusing us of industrial blight and chemical storage. By morning, the thread had exploded. Neighbors who'd never set foot on our land were posting about health risks and home prices, even claiming our modules might attract crime. That night, Jonah came home quiet. Some kid at school said we live in a junkyard. Is that true, Dad? I took him through the grid under the lights, showed him the insulation, keeping newborn calves warm, the sensors blinking green, the clean concrete floors. Let him feel the heat from the pen wall. They're not mad, son, they're scared. Fear can make good people mean. The campaign grew bolder. Emergency HOA meetings. A retired building inspector from 2 counties away gave a PowerPoint on the dangers of containers, never mind our triple redundancies, never mind the fire suppression. Soon, cookie-cutter complaint forms flooded the county office. Cold shoulders started showing up at the grocery store. Luke's truck got keyed in the feed store lot. Jonah's teacher sent home a note asking if things were okay at home. Isolation settled like an early frost. Then came the sabotage. Our hay delivery blocked by fake maintenance signs, the main water line to half the modules cut clean and left to freeze. Harper's sharp breath said everything. "We need cameras everywhere," Jonah said steady. "We need more than that," Harper replied. I didn't sleep much. But then finally, a subject line in my inbox glowed like a lifeline. Remodular Shelter Project Site Inspection Approved. We rallied, scrubbed every walkway, groomed every animal, touched up, primer ran system diagnostics. We were ready. But the attacks kept coming. Baseless noise complaints, smashed mailbox, angry flyers. Harper just quietly gathered the pieces, carried them inside, set them on the counter, and went back to scrubbing the window. "We're not leaving," I whispered. The cold kept coming, temperatures falling, frost thickening, but inside the modules, warmth held. On Halloween, a paintball splattered Jonah's window red as blood. On November 1st, someone pried open an access hatch, nearly freezing 2 calves to death. That night I stood in the grid frost, burning my lungs, and let out a roar into the dark. Not fear, not surrender, just fury. They weren't trying to win a zoning argument. They were trying to break us. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. We fought back. I compiled every record, every stat, every diagram. On inspection day, the county showed up along with a state consultant I knew, Marcus Linwood. We gave the tour: solar arrays, gray water loops, thermal sensors, anchoring plates. Marcus called it the most thoroughly executed system he'd seen in the Mountain West. And then right in the middle of it, Karen stormed in, waving a red folder, demanding her community impact statement be heard. "This facility is causing measurable stress, health anxiety," she tried, but Marcus cut her off. "No, ma'am. You've shown us opinions. We're here for facts." Karen went white, spun on her heel, and stormed out. The inspection team finished, declared us not only compliant, but exemplary. But Karen didn't accept defeat. The next morning, Benji, the neighbor's kid, came running. "They're in your east pasture, tearing things apart." I flew down there, Luke at my side, to find Karen Trent Vickers and 2 hired goons prying open modules, yanking at anchor bolts. I caught the whole thing on drone video. Sheriff Dan arrived grim-faced, called it in as trespass and vandalism. The story hit the news. Drone stills in the paper, Marcus quoted, praising our system. And of course, Karen caught on camera. The hashtag #cattle. Karen went viral. The county released a statement we were in full compliance. The county began investigating the HOA for overreach. Karen gave a tearful interview claiming she feared for resident safety. No one bought it. The boys went to school proud for once. Then the reckoning. The town hall meeting packed, standing room only. Karen tried to defend herself, but the room turned on her. County officials laid out evidence, emails, complaints, drone footage. The HOA board voted to remove her. She left town before the snow melted, her house sold to a young couple who brought cookies and wanted a tour of the famous container ranch. We raised a new sign together, Ramsey Resilience Ranch, established in truth, built in steel. The county passed new policy limiting HOA power at deed boundaries, citing our story as precedent. Letters came from all over, ranchers wanting blueprints, students citing us in their policy papers. We started a program for young farmers, offered tours, built demonstration units. I never wanted the spotlight, but I wasn't about to waste it. Through it all, I learned a bitter, beautiful truth. Sometimes you're not fighting for land or for pride. You're fighting for the right to build what you believe in, even if the world calls it a junkyard. You can't bulldoze resilience with complaints. You can't bury innovation under red tape. And you sure as hell can't break a family that refuses to be broken. So here's my question: if you were me, would you have fought back? Or would you have packed up, let fear and conformity win? Let's hear your stories about justice, about drawing your line in the dirt, about the moment you decided enough was enough. Because in the end, that's how you change the weather in your corner of the world, one unbreakable day at a time.